Probably when I was about 12 years old, 7th grade, junior high school, Houston, Texas. A friend of mine had an older brother who was kind of a, I don't know, hippie, communist rebel, and he gave me the book Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara. And I thought that was really interesting, a really cool book, you know, People's Militia, Revolutionary Army. And I read that, and then I wanted to read some other books by Che, and so I went to the local library and found some stuff there, and in the same section found books by Ho Chi Minh and you know, like Marx and Lenin, which was a little over my head at that time, but I was kind of interested and always interested in the Russian history and Russian culture, and just took it from there. Didn't become like a real hardcore communist, but understood that, you know, what we were being told about communism and Russia wasn't really the whole story by a long shot. Well, basically from there, I was just kind of a hippie growing up. Got my GED and joined the Army when I was 20. And interestingly enough, I was stationed in Germany. My parents were living in London, and I would go to visit them when I had days off from the Army. And I was riding back from Edinburgh, Scotland one time on the overnight train, the Flying Scotsman. And I was reading a book about the SAS. And there was this beautiful red-haired actress sitting across from me on the train. And she's looking at me and she's like, "Oh, so you like the SAS, do you?" And I'm like, "Well, they kill terrorists, don't they?" And she said, "Well, did you ever think maybe they were the terrorists?" And it wasn't just because she was so beautiful. She actually was like a television actress in Aberdeen, and really stunningly beautiful. But I closed the book and I said, "No, tell me more." And even though she was Scottish, she was a supporter of the Irish struggle. And we talked almost all the way to London, and that really opened my mind more. And so I started studying about that, and anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, and also, like, Patrick Pearse was a real socialist, one of the leaders of the 1916 uprising, and started reading stuff about him too. So it just was a way, it's a sign of intelligence to have an open mind and to be able to change your mind, or conversely, you could say it's the sign of the most abject and complete stupidity to think that you know it all and refuse to consider other possibilities or other ways of looking at things. And so, I started looking at things from different perspectives, and it resonated with my spirit. It made sense to me. And actually, I should say this, that before I joined the Army, my family, we lived in Brownsville, Texas, right on the Mexican border. And my dad had a maquiladora, which is a business setup where, offices and accounting are in the United States and Texas, and the factory that builds whatever you're selling is right across the river in Mexico. And it's really, real capitalist exploitation, a great way to make a lot of money because you're able to pay your workers literally 1/10 what it would cost you to pay them in the United States. And just right across the river, 5 miles away, you can, keep 90% of what you should be paying your workers for yourself. My dad had a factory over there, about 500 employees, and he made a lot of money. That was my first job. I was actually a illegal immigrant worker from the United States into Mexico. And I made $98 a week, and I was a welder, heavy steel construction factory. And that's where I understood that, about real capitalist exploitation, the guys that I was working with, they were not only, absolute masters of their craft, talking like, overhead welding and stuff like that. It's really, takes years and real skill and artistic talent to do right. But they were also really good guys, and I mean, they're living, in these, really, dirt road Mexican slums. The place right next to the factory where we worked was a Union Carbide insecticide plant, just the same kind that that killed all those people in Bhopal, India. And that was at the time when that happened, and there's guys, my friends, that lived in that neighborhood that are like, they read about Bhopal and then they're like, man, this, it's the same factory here, we could be killed by insecticide. Our whole families, our whole neighborhoods could be killed. And so that really opened my eyes about, capitalist exploitation and, the people that, really the parasite class that takes away what other people earn, and so it was just kind of reinforcing what I had read when I was younger. And then when I was in the Army, what I learned about the Irish struggle. And then when I got out of the Army, and incidentally, my dad, who was very rich, and he bribed me into joining the Army. He told me he would pay for my college and then give me a job. And while I was in Germany, the second year, I signed up for 3 years. And the second year, the Mexican peso devaluated, and all my dad's money, one morning he woke up and it was worth half of what it was the day before. He ended up, the banks called in his loans, he ended up losing his company, going broke, and he really hit the skids. When I got out of the Army, he told me and my younger brother, he said, hey, look, we're down to our last $100,000. Your mom and I are going to open a restaurant on South Padre Island. If the restaurant works, we'll be okay. If it doesn't, we're going to be out in the streets too, and we need y'all's help. So me and my brother came. We opened this restaurant, and it became one of the best restaurants in Texas. It was called The Pantry and the Grill Room, and we served steaks and seafood. Very high dollar, very fancy restaurant, excellent wine list. And then again, I was the waiter there. And I used to make good money. We could sometimes, between 6 p.m. and midnight, make $300 in tips. Well, eventually I left South Padre Island and moved to Minnesota. I became involved in the marijuana legalization movement, and I was a very serious activist. I was on the national level. At this time in like the early 1990s, we had a political party in Minnesota that was basically our single issue was legalizing weed, not just to smoke, but also for all the ecological and economic industrial uses, like making paper and cloth and oil for food and for fuel and stuff like that. And I got pretty deeply involved in that. In fact, I started smuggling weed up from Mexico to Minnesota and did that for about 6 years before I finally got snitched out and arrested. And then I got sentenced to 5 years in prison. And most of that sentence was because I was the only one on the case that didn't agree to squeal and cooperate with the cops. Everybody else, including the kingpin, my boss, got less time than I did. In fact, the kingpin got 3 years. I got 5 years and 3 months. All the other guys that were on my level that agreed to be debriefed, as they say, they all got like 18 months or a year and a day. I was sentenced in June 1996 and went to a minimum security federal, club federal prison camp because it was my first offense. There was no violence involved in any of my crimes, and in the federal prison system, 5 years is considered to be a short sentence, although it's not. I was married at that time. My wife came to visit, and I told her that a minimum security prison I can get out of, so I told her I was going to escape. She said, no, no, no. If you go on the run, we'll never be able to be together. And so I said, okay, I'll do my bit for you. And she's like, yes, yes, I'll wait for you. And she did wait for me for 3 years. And most guys that catch a federal case, their wives divorce them immediately. The good ones last about 18 months on average, and mine lasted about 3 years. But eventually she too got tired, because being married to someone in prison is a lot like being in prison yourself. She was a great girl. We're still friends. She's a pretty big time defense attorney in San Francisco now. And I don't hold anything against her. But once we got divorced, I decided that I wasn't going to, voluntarily hold my hands out for change, So I did escape. I went on the run for almost 8 years, 2,848 days. And that was a great time. I went out to Northwest Washington. I had a driver's license in a dead guy's name. I worked as a lumberjack, got paid cash off the books, and had a lot of great adventures out there. I really, really love Northwest Washington, the Great Northwest, Jack London and all that. And it was good times. Eventually, I got snitched out, went back. The U.S. Marshals that arrested me screwed up, and they took me to a maximum security federal prison directly and put me in there, which, because they did that, raising what had been my minimum security level to a maximum security level, that was a punishment for escaping. So generally what they do is they'll leave you in the county jail, they'll take you, they'll give you another case, another charge for escaping, give you more time, then bring you back to the Fed and raise your security level. But because they put me in a maximum security, and that was the punishment, and you can't be punished twice for the same crime, they couldn't give me any more time. It was another case of, extremely, incredibly lucky. And so all I had to do was finish the rest of my bit, which was about a year. And then I got out in 2009, moved back down to Texas, and started a different life down there. So I got out of prison. My sister offered me a place to stay at her house down in Austin. I went down there. I became a certified arborist because of my experience as a tree climber, tree trimmer, lumberjack. And I became like a tree doctor and a salesman for several tree companies, tree services in Austin area. And it was a pretty good life. I made good money. I was a good salesman. And, it was pretty easy. I just drove around talking to people and say, okay, here's how much we'll do this work for. And then I made a good sale. I got percentage. And so, as a good salesman making a percentage on what you sell, I made a good living. I made, 30, 35 hours a week. I was bringing home at least $1,000 a week, so that's pretty good in the United States back then. But then again, I wondered, so is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I was going crazy, man. I didn't, I wanted to do something. I didn't want to just live the rest of my life as, some bourgeois servant of the upper class. And when Libya happened, it really, really made me mad, because not many Americans knew, but I did, that Muammar Gaddafi was really a great leader and a great. He really took care of the Libyan people. It was the highest quality of living in Africa. They had free medical care. Gasoline was 14 cents a gallon. Electricity was free for residential. The Libyan government paid 50% of the price of a new car. When newlyweds got married, the Libyan government gave them $50,000. And everybody, in America, they say, oh, the crazy dictator Muammar Gaddafi. I wish Americans would think about what a crazy dictator would give them 50,000 bucks when they got married, you know, or 14 cents a gallon for gas, you know. And, you know, when Gaddafi was murdered, I knew it was completely fake, you know, that the stories against him about murdering civilians and, you know, giving Viagra to his soldiers to rape women and stuff, that just complete, absolute lies. Just like the, you know, what was it, the weapons of mass destruction with Saddam Hussein. And then when they murdered him, man, it was just like, I was ashamed to be an American after that, you know. And there was a sign on Lamar Boulevard in Austin, Texas, a major thoroughfare in that city. And it was right near my old girlfriend's house. And there was a big billboard with USMC advertisement, you know, and it was like, you know, it showed a bunch of Marines in dress blue uniforms. It said, "For honor, for country." And I took my tree climbing gear and I climbed up on that billboard one day right before dawn, and like 6-foot letters wrote, "F NATO," you know, on that Marine Corps billboard. And you know what? It was up there for more than a week before they finally took it down. You know, and I'm talking, you know, 50,000 cars a day at least drove by and saw that, you know, and that was, you know, and that made me feel good, you know. That was, at least I'm, you know, expressing myself, doing something against, you know, this hideous crime that they did to Libya. But it wasn't enough, you know. And then the Maidan starts, you know, and then I'm like seeing again, you know, it's the color revolution, you know, Newland with the cookies, John McCain is there. You know, it's the same, you know, it's the same playing out again. And then Odessa massacre. And then that was May 2nd, 2014. You know, they burned all those people to death. And they burned and beat all those people to death. And then exactly 1 month later, on June 2nd in Lugansk, there was a Ukrainian Air Force airstrike against the city administration. And there was no soldiers around. There was a bunch of civilians standing out in front. The Ukrop jet came in, shoot rockets. A bunch of people got killed. There was a woman named Ina Kukuruza, and she was hit. I mean, her legs were both blown off. And there's a short video of her, like in the last minute of her life, like sitting on the ground, on the sidewalk, next to her legs. The woman that she had just been talking to is laying beside her dead. And she's sitting there covered in blood, and she's looking up at this guy that's like coming by with his phone, like making a video. And she's looking at this guy, knowing that she's gonna die, of course. And I saw that video, and it was like she was looking straight at me, you know, looking into my heart, into my soul, and saying, "What are you gonna do about this? Are you gonna let them do this to me and just sit there and, you know, change the channel or go back to Facebook or whatever?" And that was, I mean, I'd been thinking about coming here before that, but that was the moment that I knew that nothing was going to stop me from coming here. Well, I made the decision. I told my family. They didn't believe me at first, but they should have known better. I had a final Thanksgiving with them. 2014 November. My brother and dad were there, my aunt, some of my old friends from South Padre Island, and the restaurant business came up. And my dad gave me a ride from Dallas down to Houston to get on the plane, to fly to Moscow and then on to Rostov. Came across the border into the DPR. I arrived on the 7th of December, 2014. I met a guy at a friend that I had been corresponding with, who was a writer and correspondent for RT, and he helped me out. He hooked me up with the Vostok Battalion, and a week later I was in the Novorussian Armed Forces. Then I joined Vostok Battalion on the 14th, went to Iznovata, to the training base there. It was 2 weeks of training. The first week was like training. The second week we were manning block posts. The training wasn't really anything difficult. What was difficult was the conditions. There was about 200 of us at this base. The Ukrops had bombed the water system of Izhnevoda. There was no running water. We had to go every morning and go to like wells, you know what I'm talking, wells like, you know, from a fairy tale or something, you know, with the bucket and the chain and the little roof, and get, you know, probably 400, 500 liters of water every day and carry them in like metal milk cans back to the base on these little, you know, carts. It was tough, man. It was cold. The food was horrible. It was basically kasha with just, you know, basically some grease on it. And it was the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. There was tea, good hot tea with very sweet, always served sweet. And that was, you know, and sala too, you know, the bacon fat, you know, so it was carbohydrates, fat, sugar, and that's what we survived on. After 2 weeks of training, on the day before New Year's Eve, I was told, all right, tomorrow I'll be going to the airport. And so at about 4 o'clock in the morning on the beginning of New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2014, I loaded up all my gear and went to the airport, to the monastery, my first position. When I got there, it was just at dawn. It was dark still. It was very, very cold. Those days it was like 25 below. And as soon as I got out of the van, the first thing I saw is a blown up church, the Iversky Monastery. And you know, that was like, really I understood that that was the symbol of this war, you know, between good and evil. And I also realized that the position that I was going to be manning was basically right in the middle of a giant cemetery. So it was also the struggle between life and death. It was a very hot, very hard position. Conditions were very, very tough. And I was lucky to survive it. This is the spot right here where I got out of the van on the morning of December 31st, 2014. It was at dawn, it was dark, very cold, and the first thing that I saw when I got out was this church. And it was in tough shape. We unloaded ammo, food, water. Some guys came from the monastery. The first thing they told me, they pointed to the airport, they said snipers. They pointed to the control tower, they said snipers. And I understood that word in Russian. And so we had to like run from here to the monastery to get the gear in. And then New Year's Eve, of course, was kind of quiet, but New Year's Day, that was, we started working then. And here the battles were every day. Thousands of bullets shot by each side every day. The first position, the monastery, when I first got there, there was the only heat was from stoves, wood-burning stoves. The only light was from candles or flashlights. And it was, you know, all the windows were filled up with sandbags, so there was no light even during the day. You had to use a flashlight even during the day. The stoves all faced to the east, and because on the west side was the new terminal, and so to be on the west side of the building was dangerous because there was often heavy-duty artillery and stuff incoming on that side. And the wind was coming from the east. And so you had the choice between either not building a fire in the stove, and then it would be literally 25 below zero, or you could build a fire in the stove, but then the smoke would come in. I mean, the wind would blow the smoke right back down the chimney into the rooms. And it was, I mean, literally 5 years later, my lungs have not and probably never will completely heal from that experience. I had already a very bad lung infection that I had picked up in Iznovata. The smoke did not help at all. I was there for 2 weeks. There was gun battles every day and every night. And as with most of the positions that I served at, we were on the east facing to the west. So the Ukrops, the Ukrainians, would, as the sun was setting behind them, which blocked our vision and made them be able to see us better, that's when they would come and attack as the sun was setting, and then the attacks would continue into the night, sometimes all night long. And I'm talking like thousands and multi-thousand round gunfights every day and every night. And it was pretty heavy. Then on the 16th, the doctor came, and basically I was ordered to go back to the infirmary because of my cough, which was very lucky for me because the next day there was a major attack by the Ukrainian army and Pravi sector Nazis against the monastery. There was 12 of our guys, 12 friends of mine, that held that position against 200 Ukrops and Nazis. They were attacked with BMPs, tanks, and 200 Ukrainian infantry, and they held the position. 3 of our guys got killed in that battle, but more than 100 Ukrainians also died in that same battle. I was back in Donetsk. One of the guys from my unit called me the next day and told me what happened, and I said, "All right, I'll be back on base in an hour." And I went straight back and said, "All right, I'm fine, I'm cured. Let's go back to the airport," and I did. Then we went to Old Milnitsa, which was another position. I was there a week or so, and then it got a direct hit from a 120 millimeter mortar. Again, I was incredibly, the numbers of times that, bullets have, come within a foot of my head, or artillery has come so close. But this is the hole that was made by the artillery. Probably a 120 millimeter. And it was about noon. I'd been on guard duty all night. I was sleeping right here. We had like 6 or 8 beds all pushed together, just kind of like a big old dog pile to sleep on. And I was laying right there in the corner. I heard some artillery hitting close. And I thought, well, should I get up or, get ready or something? Then I thought, well, if they want me to get up, they'll tell me. And if they don't tell me, I'm just going to sleep some more. And as soon as I rolled over, that's when this bomb hit right here. And you can see like the ground is, 6 inches below the bottom of it. Here's the roof of the first floor. It was a perfect hit right on the wall. There was a guy sleeping there and a guy sleeping there. They were lightly injured. One guy got some shrapnel. One guy was like walking through there. He got some shrapnel. But if I had gotten up, right here was the table where we made like the tea and coffee and stuff. And if I had gotten up, I'd have been standing right in front of this thing when it hit. So it was, just a matter of seconds and a matter of inches can mean the difference between, death or not a scratch. And then in June 2015, the unit that I was in, Sud Vremeny, was transferred from Vostok to Spetsnaz Battalion, Han Battalion Spetsnaz. And so we went from being on the front line all the time to a official army Spetsnaz base. It was, it was no more like a militia or, Opolchenitz. It was real, army discipline, army barracks. The commander, you had to have the battalion commander's permission to go off base to go buy some toothpaste or something. And if the commander wasn't around, you could wait 2 or 3 days just to go to a store 50 meters down the road. Also very, very, very tough training. And by this time I was 55 years old, and I started thinking that maybe I'm not quite cut out for, Spetsnaz, acrobat, ninja, James Bond type stuff, and it wasn't that I was scared, or even that I was not physically able to do it, but I wasn't physically able to do it as well as guys in their early or mid 20s, who were, well trained, real athletes, and just, I just thought, if I try and do it with these guys now, if I go to the front or behind the lines, I'll end up slowing them up, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I told the commander, I said, look, by this time I'd been interviewed a few times. Vice News had interviewed me, and I did very well in that interview, even though Simon Ostrovsky was trying to do a hatchet job on me. I pretty much turned it around on him. That episode got like 500,000 views, and most of the comments were in support of me rather than Ostrovsky. And so the commanders and the people who make those decisions saw that I had some skill as far as being a correspondent or a information warrior. I made another video about Anna Tuv, a woman in Gorlovka whose house got bombed by 152 artillery. Her husband was killed. Her 11-year-old daughter was killed. Her house was completely destroyed. She lost her left arm above the elbow in the attack. She had a 3-year-old son at that time and a 2-week-old little baby. And she was able to save them, dig them out, and save herself. She had to wait about 2 hours for the ambulance to come, had to make a tourniquet herself because the shelling was continuous for 2 hours and the ambulance couldn't get in under the shelling. I met her, made a video of her at the hospital, made a video of her house, and both of those had a real big impact as well. So, the commander said, okay, you can be a, counter-propagandist, an information warrior. And so that's what I started doing. We raised $10,000 for Anna Tuv to get her new prosthetic arm. So they also saw that I was good as a fundraiser too. So that's what I started doing, and basically those two things is what I've been doing ever since. In the summer of 2017, Sud Vremeny came out of Han Battalion and became its own independent battalion with the MVD, which is like internal troops, kind of military police, and they asked me if I could come in and help while they were building up the battalion, and I did. So I spent like 4 months at the Avdiivka front in the summer of 2017. That was also a tough position. By this time, it was the policy of the commanders was that if the UCROP shot at us, we couldn't shoot back unless they were making a direct assault on the position. And so we were working in the hot sun, filling sandbags, raising logs, digging ditches with full, body armor and helmets, and getting shot at but not able to shoot back. That got old pretty quick. I did it for 4 months, and then went back home and started doing again, concentrating on the humanitarian aid and information warfare.
Там танец будет показывать.
Ну музыка. Я снимаю пока.
Не туда,
Нет,
не надо. Мы
Гена,
так
не спеши.
в камеру.
Я снимаю.
А это мы пойдем.
Подождите.
Сейчас я раздам.
бумажечка. Берите, на.
Сидите, вам подойдут, ребята.
За все, я благ есть.
Спасибо, говорим. Надо помыть. Ты кушаешь, надо помыть.
Donetsk has a baseball league for boys and girls. Today we're with Lisa and Natasha. They're in the Pony League, the late teens, early 20s. They're here today having a little practice with the Little League kids, the younger guys, helping them out. Lisa has been playing baseball for 9 years. Natasha for 4 years.
Благодаря малой лиги из США, Пенсильвания, да, и Украина получала через свой куратор абсолютно все, что нужно, чтобы заниматься. Имеется в виду инвентарь, и мячи, и биты, и абсолютно все. С началом войны нам отказали. Когда началась только война, автоматически прекратили абсолютно все связи, они не захотели больше с нами связаться, даже разговаривать. Нас считают сепаратистами, и было отказано сотни детям в нормальном развитии в спорте. Вот то, что мы имеем.
So you can see the kind of gear these kids are left with today. I mean, there's hardly any of these baseballs that ain't just, yeah. Stay Haas in Donbas with Donbas Humanitarian Aid. Today, we're taking school supplies, cleaning supplies, and of course little candy to 3 big families, Makievka, Anjonkovo, and Shakhtorsk. We got a family with 5 kids, a family with 8 kids, and a family with 4 kids. So we're taking 17 kids, school supplies, the moms get some laundry soap, some sponges and stuff like that to clean up, and of course, when you go to visit kids, you always got to take them a little candy. All right, so this is the family with 8 kids. We've been here many times before. One of the oldest daughters got married recently, but there's these 4 kids, plus there's 3 more kids living here that are elsewhere right now. But we're dropping off the goodies for all of them, school supplies, candy, notebooks, whatnot. And this is all from the people that support Donbas Humanitarian Aid. I've been working ever since, doing videos. I write occasional articles for Fort Russ News, which is a great news site for information about not just Donbas, but you know, the whole anti-imperialist world situation. You know, I've made a lot of videos, and I'm real proud of that work. It's the information war is every bit as important as the economic and military war. I mean, it's really all combined, and somebody's got to do it, and apparently I'm pretty good at it, so I like doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it. If there's ever a big attack here, I mean, I have a backpack in my closet that's got, I call it my airport bag. You know, I have also my machine gun at home, my Kalashnikov. You know, I can be ready to go back to the front in half an hour, and if they need me, I will, you know.
Met somebody very special and ended up getting married.
The girl of my dreams, my guardian angel, the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me in my life, man. Ludmila she wrote to me on VKontakte, which is like the Russian version of Facebook. I'd made a video, and one of her, she's an English teacher, Ludmila is, and she wrote to me and said, "Oh, I see one of my students is in your video." I'm like, "Oh, a girl from Donetsk that speaks perfect English? I should, write to her back." And I'm like, "Hello, hello." So I asked her if she wanted to maybe help us with the videos making subtitles, which she did, and which she's very, very good at. And she also started trying to give me Russian lessons. She's an excellent teacher. I'm kind of a lazy student, but I think I knew from the first time that I met her that I was going to marry her, and so I did. And I'm glad. It's the best move I ever made in my life. She's a good bit younger than me, but in so many ways more wise and more mature than I'll probably ever be. Russian women, they have the, of course they're beautiful, but also they have the wisdom and the patience and the toughness too, to handle any situation, to make any situation better. She's also a great cook. I eat a lot of borscht now, and I like it. I feel as if I've been coming here my whole life. Like this is the destiny of where I was meant to be, and that everything, all the hard things that I did in my life, working in Mexico, being in prison, being in the U.S. Army, all these things were like, training and preparation for what was going to be my biggest test and my biggest challenge, which was coming here. And, so all the hard stuff that happened to me before in life, I'm glad of, because it prepared me for this. It made me able to do this. I'm very, very proud of what I've done here, and I didn't come here to be an internet star or famous or a big shot or have people say, "Hey, Tejas," or anything. I never expected it to be like this, to turn out the way it did. I thought, literally, honestly, before I came here, when I was, on my way here, when I said, I thought, where am I going to be in 3 months? And the vision that I had was like hugging my rifle in a trench in the mud, screaming as artillery came down around me until the one came right on top of me. That's really pretty much what I expected to happen, which did happen to a lot of guys right down close beside me, but I was just lucky, man. I wrote a song, a biographical song, some years back called "The Idiot Savant." The last line of that song says, "All the people I've known and loved, all the places that I did see. If I had to do it all again, no different would I be." All the people I've known and loved, all the places that I did see. If I had to do it all again, no different would I be. 'Cause I may not have everything, but I got what I want. I got no reason to pretend I'm just an imbecile savant. Last verse, French rap. Ça va, ooh la la, mademoiselle, pardonnez-moi, sacre du mandou. Voulez-vous le coucher-coup avec un imbécile? Je suis l'imbécile, je suis l'imbécile savant. There's no place I'd rather live than Donetsk, man. This is my home. This is truly where I've been coming all my life to be.